I'd like to introduce, it is Gadi and Alon.
All right, thanks.
So give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here with us today. This talk is about persistency or our research of persistent technologies or techniques used in OS apps and keeping inside the organization, even though the OS app itself is disabled, and we'll release a piece of code on GitHub that is the attack walkthrough that we're doing. And this code shows a new technique. We developed a watchdog technique to keep an app enabled even after an administrator disables it, and we'll show the walkthrough. So first of all, I'd like to introduce my senior researcher and teammate, Zeno, or Alon. Really happy to be here with him in the first talk in a security conference. Niv Steinberger is our CTO. For unfortunate reasons, he couldn't be here himself, but he definitely pointed us into the right direction for this research and to put on a new finding that's even post-infection, you can stay persistent using OS apps. I'm Gadi. It's my 42nd birthday today, so I'm really... I was looking this morning for the questions of life, the universe, and everything. I can share it later. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope this session will gift you with some new probing points into a less-minded field, which is always a good place to look for new vulnerabilities as researchers. And with that, I'll give Zeno the stage to introduce the research.
Hey, everyone. My name is Alon, but you can call me Zeno. Most of my friends do when you see me around here. OK, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Oauth 2, why we're using it, what's the challenges that we can face when we use it, and then afterwards we're going to give the stage to Gadi, that he'll explain more details about the actual work that we did and some of the bypasses that we found on Oauth, right? So why do we even use Oauth 2, right? So as we all know, all the cool kids are moving to the cloud, right? All the data, everything is going over there. So it makes sense that we need to go and find a standard that helps us work with the resources online, all right? Oauth 2 provides us exactly that. It provides us a way for applications to work with resources on behalf of users, all right? So why are we actually using it? The actual reason is it's already there. Most of the SaaS providers, SaaS application providers already use that and give that for customers, so that's why most of us use it. Right? So let's talk a little bit about how the basic flow of Oauth works, all right? And I'm sure that once we go over it, you'll see that it's something that you're all familiar with. So the first stage that we have here is the actual request for consent. The application that wants to connect to the environment asks for consents for the user. You might have seen this pop up before. That happens to the user. It just asks you for consent. Easy enough. You just press OK, and you get the consent. What happens actually after that is that the user gives the consent, the app takes that consent, that grant, authorization grant, to the authorization server, and receives a token back. This is the holy grail. The token basically gives you the permission to access those resources as the user repeatedly, without asking any more consent, without any other prompts for the user. You just keep on using it, all right? So once you get the token, I can just go and access everything. So once we talked a little bit about why we use Oauth and how it works, let's talk a little bit about the challenges it presents. We'll start with a quote that we have from Eran Hammer that made a decade ago, right, when it started working. As he says, you can read it there, but basically what it means is it started as a good idea. but even Eran Hammer, which was the chief editor of that standard, decided to withdraw his name from it because he felt it became a bit too complex and it doesn't deliver exactly what we need from it. All right? So it is widely adopted by most SaaS platforms. A lot of people use it. It allows us to use all kinds of really sensitive material and sensitive resources, but even the creator felt they kind of missed something there, right? So this is the main challenge that we have working with it. So once we have those challenges, let's talk about why we decided to actually pick on Oauth 2, why we wanted to see if there's something weird there. The first part is all the data is there. The data up in the cloud, most of the places allow you to use Oauth 2 to access this data, right? And the second part, which is kind of interesting to me, is the whole idea behind it is you get consent once, and then you stop bothering the user again, right? So this is like the main feature of Oauth, but it's also kind of the main vulnerability it has, because if I got once the token, I get one consent, I can keep on working with it. There's no way the user can't see it. It doesn't bother him, as we say, right? So this is the worst part for a defender and the best part for an attacker. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to give Gadi back the stage. He's going to talk a little bit about some mitigations that we saw on platforms that they did already because they wanted to fix a little bit. And then he'll talk to you about what we managed to research further and find some bypasses around those mitigations. Right, so Gadi?
Thank you, Zeno. It was an excellent introduction. Always glad to work with you. So about Oauth, as Zeno said, it's kind of a young, well, it's used for a lot of it. Security-wise, it's kind of young and immature. And in 2018, there was actually a worm using Google Apps Script called Google Docs worm. So even Google sometimes mess with Oauth. You can see here in the slide that the app script was sending phishing emails from an infected user, asking him that his friend wants to share a file with him using Google Docs. The logo is Google Docs. The naming is Google Docs, so it's in a way impersonate the apps. And it gets permission to go over all your contact list and read your emails and send emails on behalf of you to all of your contact lists with the same phishing message. This is a file I want to share with you, and it got over in a couple of hours. It got over 1 million users of infected, and until Google stopped it. So after this case and similar cases with Microsoft, Azure, and Google implemented different mitigations. One of them is that the publisher needs to be verified. So instead of just giving every developer to put his name and his publisher credential, there is a process to be verified by the platform, by Azure, by Microsoft, and then to have better permissions or allow higher permissions to be installed or even actually be installed. And as you can see here, new application registered after 2000 are not allowed to be installed without an admin consent. And you can ask the admin for the relevant, for consenting to you to install the app. In addition, the name is missing and the logo is missing, so there won't be any way to copycat or mimic the application and look alike like the application and make a user fall for the phishing. Additionally, post-infections mitigations were in place. For example, you can't send forward emails outside of the organization with email box rules automatically. And now actually there's a process with Microsoft. They're saying they try to raise the awareness that MFA has to be enabled in all organizations. They failed to do it, and now they're trying to do some sort of default security rules and make sure that at least administrator has to have multi-factor authentication. And definitely if you look back on exploit mitigation techniques. On the PC, I think it's a similar process. We're seeing now new attacks cause the platform to develop new mitigations. Is these are relevant mitigations? We'll touch in our research how first of all, still, though the publisher verification process is in place, most applications, even ones that have email read permissions and email write permissions, don't have this publisher verification in place. We see 60% of applications that are actually having this being verified for applications with read permissions, and for sending permissions, there is actually only 7% of application. So it's a good start, but it still needs to be advocated, and awareness should be risen to this vulnerability. We'll touch now on different attack vectors, okay, and a very common one is the device code flow. This is used for devices with lacking input devices and no keyboard, so a user can use his own cell phone to authenticate to the identity access management system by Azure, for example, or any YAM or Google, Slack, whatever, and then the application asynchronically gets can request the token from the server. This is how it actually looks like. First of all, a user, or in this case, we put it as an attacker. There's actually, because it's a device, or for example, a monitor, and its code is available publicly because anyone can reverse engineer the code. So there's no client secret inside this process. So there's no verification that the client that's asking the code or getting the token is actually the client. So the attacker or the client asks for device code. He then presents this code. He gets the code from the YAM, and this allows the YAM to connect the user authenticating and the application. So he sends the code to the user, and in our case, it might be a phishing email. You send, please log into microsoft.com/device code. The user entered the code there and authenticates through the server with this multi-factor authentication in place. So there's no need to hack the cell phone, etc. Only the user need to be phished, and the multi-factor authentication doesn't stop the attack. Sorry. Then the attacker gets the access token from the YAM and send the token to the resource server and gets the user's own documents or data, or can do any functions in the name of the user. This attack, which starts, as I said, with this device code, the user needs to go to a legitimate login page. And just recently, William Overweg also noted that in addition to impersonating the app, there's no consent needed. So in cases the first thing the user will see is this login page on Microsoft. It will enter the code, and then in case that the attacker is impersonating Microsoft Office, which allows this flow for certain reasons, and then all the permissions that Microsoft Office has, which is a first-party app by Microsoft, so it's defaultly user has consented to these permissions, there will be no permission or consent screen as is the usual flow that there's in Oauth. So the user doesn't suspect, he gets the same permissions that he granted the Microsoft Office, so it's called phishing without consent. And we'll use it in our code. The attack methods that we want to discuss here is persistence. Okay, so if again we're moving from PC world to cloud SaaS, same techniques. Okay, so we want you got the user to be infected or install your OS app. Now you want to be persistent, meaning you want to have the access to the data without needing to re-authenticate the user or get any permissions, delegated permissions by the user, having him to do a multi-factor authentication again. So first of all, you can create a user or create an application. You can update the user password or password recovery email, so you can actually have the user password and change the multi-factor authentication number or device, and then you can have access in any time you wish. And there's also now was reported a known attack with that allowed legacy protocols. So legacy protocols like IMAP do not support multi-factor authentication. You can enlist a user for such an application, and then if you have these credentials, you can use it without the need to multi-factor authentication. Also, app passwords is a legacy method to allow apps that do not support Oauth to use app passwords and then allow this flow and have the user connected with a username and password, and you can add the username and password to this app. What we're adding to this post-exploit techniques is a watchdog. A watchdog essentially means that there's a process that looks over other processes and makes sure they are enabled even if an administrator tries to disable them. Again, for the same terminology of incident responders, there's a lateral movement or pivoting from one user to another. So one way is to get the read access and put mailbox rules to delete certain messages. By that, you can reset emails and for example, to Monday.com or other SaaS platforms. After you reset the emails, you get access and move laterally to the other cloud services. You can also infect files with macros and app scripts, and then make sure a user or other user in the same organization are infected again. And there's a very dangerous supply chain attack, or if you are able to infect a user who is a developer and he creates applications and actually sells them and exports them to his customers, if you'll add a certificate to this application, which means many times applications have application level permissions, meaning that they don't need the user to authenticate. They can just log in with a certificate. If you add a certificate to such an application, you can, by that, move to all the users of the applications that this developer created. This was also used by nation state and now, but of course it becomes more common. So about the code that we have, and if there will be interest, we'll have another session this afternoon and we'll show a live demo. But for now, I'll do an attack walkthrough with that code. So first, what we're looking for in order to allow our watchdog is we're looking for application read-write all permissions, which allows us to create applications. So what we're trying to do is imitate or impersonate security software in this case, because security software for the cloud, which lists applications, needs to have these permissions in order to view applications installed in the organization. So you usually need to find a high privileged user that has them. You'll be surprised that actually security software do enable, some of them enable a device code flow, and as I said, this is very good pointers for researchers and pen testers to test inside the organization. What the user can do, what the administrator will get, either he can consent on behalf of himself or behalf of all the users in his organization. Once he allows the permissions to all users in the organization, then you can fish actually any user in the organization and get the application read-write accesses that this user had, which actually means you can create applications on his behalf and also control all the applications that the user controls, add certificates, etc., as I noted. So in our case, I'm attacking with the device code flow. The attacker you need to create a phishing email that will make him install this application security or impersonate a good application security platform. And then, as we said, with the flow, we started this flow, so we'll have the device code, we'll send the administrator, and then we'll get the token. Now, using this token, what we will do is create an internal app. And we'll give it our own redirect URLs. If you remember, in the normal flow, if after user authenticates, he is redirected to the actual app, and then the flow continues. If we created the application, we can create the redirect URL and then move it, get any token to us. We also create the secret, and if you'll notice, the app here is internal. And if you remember what we touched before, is that internal apps has different bypass the mitigation techniques put by Microsoft. There's no vetting process or verifying process for internal apps by Microsoft, so there's no stating that this app might be risky and that the name is given, and any user in the organization can install the app by himself. It doesn't need an admin consent, even though it's a newly registered app. And this is just the sample from our code. Once you get, we have infected the admin, we got a token for the admin, and then infected the user. What we'll do is to keep that phishing application that the user was infected with live. Okay, so this code shows how we're using the Python interface for the Microsoft Graph API to basically just keep an account enabled, even if it was disabled. For the admin, this is the admin portal for Azure. If an admin wants to stop an app, what he should do is not delete an app, which might even delete all users using this app and might cause errors if it's a false positive. But it also, if a deleted app can be reinstalled. So the best practice would be to disable an app, which means that no user can log into it and no user can install it. So that's the why this method is good. And then we can restore, using the code, we can restore the app to be enabled. And other than, though the app was disabled, the token was not revoked, and every infected user we can still get access into it. We can also then disable the app and keep it persistent and keep it quiet and make using the refresh token every interval, we can keep alive and keep our app inside the organization, even though the admin thought it's done. I'll touch quickly on solutions. No, if you have any questions, I'll touch I'll touch on solutions, and I'd like to thank you very much for being with us and paying attention.